Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here with us today. We're tackling this massive, super common goal, and honestly, we're going to completely flip how you approach it. If you've ever wanted to learn French, but you convinced yourself, hey, I just don't have the language gene, or maybe you saw the wild price tags for premium software and emergent trips and just threw in the towel, well, this explainer is absolutely for you. Today, we're dismantling those myths, like tearing them completely down. We're giving you a highly effective, totally free roadmap to French fluency, pulled straight from the world's top polyglots and language educators.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this specific question is what stops most of us dead in our tracks before we even start. We tell ourselves we're too old, or, we just don't have that natural talent. We convince ourselves that because we don't have hundreds of dollars a year to drop on some fancy tutor, our language dreams are basically on hold forever. But what if the barrier isn't your age? What if it isn't your wallet or your brain? What if the barrier is literally just the method you've been using all along?
So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're taking you from mindset to mastery. We'll be hitting the language learning myth, speaking from day one, the broke-friendly French roadmap, choosing your free path, 8 rules for French mastery, and finally, consistency over cost. All right, section 1, the language learning myth. Let's totally rethink the classroom, shall we? Think back to your high school language classes for a second. If you're anything like me, you probably remember a ton of super frustrating rote memorization, conjugating verbs on a chalkboard over and over, and basically zero actual communication. That traditional learning model is incredibly heavy on grammar, it demands absolute perfection before you even open your mouth, and it relies on these really expensive textbooks. But flip that on its head for a second. Enter hyper-polyglot Benny Lewis. This guy speaks over a dozen languages and wrote the best-selling book Fluent in 3 months. His whole approach, which he calls language hacking, is a total game changer. He argues that language isn't some academic challenge to pass, it's a bridge for human connection. Passion and the actual desire to talk to someone, that beats out academic textbook study every single time. His method relies heavily on strategic home immersion, swapping out those boring rote drills for actual real-life human interaction.
Moving right along to section 2, speak from day one. It is time to embrace your mistakes.
How do we actually apply this new mindset in the real world? Well, by prioritizing real, messy, authentic conversations. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly by Benny Lewis. Fluency isn't perfection, it's connection. He points out that mistakes aren't failures. They're essentially the fertilizer for your language growth. You absolutely do not need some special genetic makeup to learn French as an adult. Fact is, adults acquire languages through consistent daily micro-practices. You gotta stop waiting until you have this perfectly polished vocabulary to start speaking. You have to actually speak to build the vocabulary.
And speaking of vocabulary, if you're a beginner, I guarantee you already know way more French than you think you do. There's this totally free audio app called Language Transfer, and it uses something called the thinking method. Guys, this is a massive aha moment. Instead of drilling you with flashcards, the teacher guides you to realize that English and French are basically linguistic cousins. In just the first few 5-minute lessons, you'll discover you already have a working vocabulary of roughly 3,000 words. No joke. Words ending in th or tie usually translate effortlessly. So, and information? That's simply une information. Liberty? It's la liberté. You are absolutely not starting from scratch here.
Section 3, the broke-friendly French roadmap. Time for zero-cost execution. To actually pull this off without spending a single dime, we're looking at a strategy curated by French teacher Jan. He totally gets the reality of a tight budget, especially when things get a bit financially squeezed. So, here's your immediate 3-step action plan. First, you need to figure out exactly where you stand. You can take a totally free 15-minute baseline listening test on the French TV channel website, TV5 Monde. This quick little test is going to save you from the absolute torture of picking a course that's either way too easy or completely overwhelming. Once you have your baseline level, like, say, A1 for a beginner or maybe B1 for intermediate, you identify your specific goal, and then you head straight over to an educational platform called Fun.
Which brings us to section 4, choosing your free path with France Université Numérique.
France Université Numérique, or FNN for short, is absolutely packed with completely free courses created by professional organizations and actual French universities. The golden rule to remember here is you don't need to learn all of the French language, you just need to learn the French that actually matters to you. Let's break this down a bit. These are top-tier, high-quality courses created by pros like l'Alliance Française de Paris. If you're planning a trip or a big move, you definitely want the Vivre à France series. It covers all those real-life survival skills, how to navigate the metro, go grocery shopping, or, my personal favorite, how to properly jump into a French apéro. Now, if your goal is more career-driven, Travailler en France drops you right into job searching, interviews, and navigating French office culture. Or if you're a student getting ready to study abroad, MOOC to Move decodes all that notoriously tricky French university administration and teaches you the proper academic register. Basically, you get to cherry-pick exactly what you need.
All right, Section 5. 8 Rules for French Mastery. Building the foundation of the language.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these first 4 rules fundamentally rewire your English-speaking brain. For this part, we turn to the Complete French Self-Study Guide by educator Delaine Moreau. She brilliantly boils the whole massive landscape of French down to 8 foundational rules. First up, everything, and I mean literally every single object around you, has a gender. So you must learn your vocabulary with its article, or in. Second, plurals are a bit tricky because the plural s at the end of a word, it's usually silent. You really only know a word is plural because of the article right in front of it. Third, while nous technically means we, the French constantly use the word on in casual conversation as a singular pronoun that also means we. And fourth, there is no neutral it in French. A table is a she, a book is a he. It takes some getting used to for sure.
Moving to the final 4 rules. These deal heavily with spoken French, which honestly often looks completely different from written French. That's thanks to rule number 5, silent letters. Rule 6 reminds us that French relies on specific combinations of 2 or more letters to make its unique sounds. Then Rule 7 introduces the liaison, which is that beautiful, flowing sound where words kind of melt and connect together in speech. Finally, Rule 8. This one is a huge trip-up for beginners. It's the verbs être, meaning to be, and avoir, meaning to have. See, in English, you are 30 years old and you are hungry. But in French, you have 30 years and you have hunger. You really have to learn when to use which.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how you can tackle all this information systematically. These are tracker sheets right from Dylan Moreau's self-study guide. When you actually map out your specific grammar lessons and your pronunciation sounds, like nailing the difference between an accent aigu and an accent grave, you prove to yourself that structured, real progress is entirely possible without paying for a pricey tutor. You literally just check the boxes as you master each new concept. Simple, right?
Finally, Section 6, Consistency over Cost, where self-discipline wins the day.
So, we have successfully removed the financial barrier. But let's be real, free doesn't mean magic. The course is on Fun, the language transfer app, these self-study trackers. Yes, they're all free. But without that massive financial guilt trip forcing you to show up to a paid class, it all comes down to your own self-discipline. Just look at this visual planner. The ultimate takeaway from all these polyglots and teachers is that you must start small. Don't go signing up for 5 courses today. Pick just one. Take one 5-minute lesson on language transfer. Block out a tiny, realistic window of time in your calendar right now. Set a very specific goal, like, say, ordering a meal in French 3 weeks from now. And take action today. Rely on your schedule and your commitment, not your wallet or some mythical, magical language talent. The resources are there, and they are completely free. The mindset shift, moving from seeking strict academic perfection to actually prioritizing human connection, well, that's entirely in your hands. So the only question left for you is this: what will you say on day 1? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Get out there, embrace the messy mistakes, and just start speaking.